Why are chants of Hezbollah, Hezbollah accompanying buns and street protests in the Kashmir Valley after Israel's action against the Hezbollah chief? I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Israel has launched fresh attacks, this time against Houthi bases in Yemen, clearly expanding the war in Gaza to now include both Lebanon and Yemen. Even as the war in West Asia or the Middle East expands, the killing of the Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah has exposed a peculiar and perhaps unexpected fault line in the Kashmir Valley, which is also undergoing a historic election, the first in 10 years and the first after the abrogation of Article 370. One might argue that one has not even seen these kind of protests after the special status was read down. The ever expanding war by Israel in West Asia raises questions as to what might India do next? How will India handle these fault lines? As several Jammu and Kashmir leaders based in the Kashmir Valley actually called off their campaign to express solidarity with the slain Hezbollah chief, many slammed them, asking what it had to do with any mainstream politician in the Kashmir Valley. Why were chants of Hezbollah, Hezbollah being heard in the valley? There's a lot to talk about, including what is the appropriate response by India to the ever escalating war in West Asia or Middle East, depending on your point of view. Let me introduce our guests on the program today. Tavleen Singh, columnist and author, is joining us on social media. She criticized the endorsement, the solidarity, the affinity expressed by certain sections of Kashmiri society with the killed Hezbollah chief. Also joining us is military veteran General Katoch. Welcome back to the program. Always a pleasure. Also joining us from Kashmir today is a PDP leader, Najmu Saqib. Welcome to the program, Najmu. The PDP's Mehbooba Mufti was among those who said that she was calling off her campaign a bit earlier, and she condemned Israel's action against the Hezbollah leader. And also joining us is a veteran diplomat, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Welcome everybody to the program. Tavleen, let me start by asking you. You were very vocal in your criticism. From what I understand, the protests have mostly taken place in Shia enclaves, though not exclusively, but mostly or predominantly in Shia enclaves. It almost seems to be a point of religious affinity more than a kind of political position or a position in this Israel, Lebanon, Gaza, Iran conflict. Why were you so disturbed by it? It's not across the valley. It's a smattering of protests. But yes, it does seem to be the first sign of street protests of the kind that weren't even seen after the abrogation of Article 370. Tavleen Singh.
Yeah, I whether they're Shias or Sunnis, as far as I'm concerned, really doesn't make a difference. When you celebrate, or whatever it is, when you mourn the death of a terrorist, to me that is not a good thing to do. In my view, Nasrallah showed more than once that he was a terrorist, and Hezbollah has been like a kind of, we know that it's backed by Iran, but it's not an official organization. It is a terrorist organization. They've been responsible for endless numbers of terrorist, acts, and I don't support terrorists. That's the bottom line. I don't like it when anyone in India supports a terrorist, whether it's Shia, Sunni, Sikh, or Hindu. It's not something that I approve of.
And what do you make of the fact that these kind of solidarity marches are taking place? Do you see this as election season sort of rhetoric? Do you think it reflects something more?
I think it reflects a lot more. I've been in Kashmir a little bit earlier, not during the election, and you've been there. Are you still there? Are you still there?
No,
Okay.
I'm back now. I'm back now. Yeah.
But under the surface calm, there is a kind of, bubbling up of Kashmiri feelings against the denial of political rights for quite a long time. And I think that that when they put the jackboot in after removing Article 370, it might have been necessary then. But I really believe that they've done a lot of things wrong since then. I actually approve of the removal of Article 370, but I think that the denial of political rights was not a good idea, because you need to be able to put some salve on, on the wound of the removal of a special status. So, I mean, I think there's a lot going on, and I think the election results might tell us what it is that's going on.
And in a way, it is your perhaps argument that this kind of street protest, this time against Israel, might be something to do with repressed sentiment, that is to do with something else. And this is just, Kashmiris coming out and expressing themselves. And there's certainly one leader who actually belonged to Engineer Rashid's party who told me that these elections are the unlocking of a collective suffocation of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So one doesn't know exactly what's going on. We'll ask Najmu in just a moment. But in the meantime, chants of Hezbollah, Hezbollah have been heard on the streets of Kashmir, which actually logically doesn't really make a lot of sense. We didn't hear chants of 370 Wapis Lao in the way that we're hearing Hezbollah, Hezbollah. I'll play a small clip from some of the protest sites. Take a look, and then we'll come to Najmu Saqib. Now, Najmu Saqib, you're a young leader of the PDP. Why are we hearing chants praising a militia? It is a militia backed by Iran, a proxy for Iran. Whatever be your views on Israel, and you can have any view on Israel, what you think of Israel's action in Gaza, whether you think it's disproportionate force, whether you think civilian life is in, the large scale civilian loss of life in Gaza raises all sorts of moral questions, and that would be a different debate. But why are these chants of Hezbollah, Hezbollah? Why the heroism around Hassan Nasrallah, who effectively heads a private militia that is seen by most of the world as a terror organization? Najmu.
Look, Barkha, I think what is happening in Kashmir is a complete sense of helplessness. That we, for last so many months, we are seeing people of Palestine being slaughtered mercilessly, schools decimated, hospitals bulldozed, thousands of children killed, maimed, their dreams destroyed, millions, lakhs of people displaced. So what we're seeing in Kashmir is a complete mourning or a protest. It is a solidarity with the people of Palestine and those who stand by the people of Palestine. I think there is absolutely nothing wrong when in Bangladesh, there were a lot of people in India who felt that Hindu community is not being protected, and they were on the streets, they were on the social media talking about it. So all we are doing in Kashmir is remembering and expressing solidarity with the people of Palestine. As far as Hezbollah is concerned, look, we have to look at the genesis of Hezbollah. There was a sectarian civil war in Lebanon. So it is a byproduct of that civil war. I mean, Hezbollah did not emerge out of vacuum, or Hezbollah was, it is a proxy of Iran. There's no doubt about it. I mean, in Kashmir also, there on in sectarian within a certain community, he has a fan following, and there are people who actually love him within that particular community. Whether you brand him as a terrorist, I don't think so. Ministry of
But
External
doesn't
Affairs
that
or Government of
disturb
India.
you? But
I
doesn't
don't
that
think Ministry of
disturb you?
I think look, Barkha, with your and Tavleen ji's definition, I think Government of India has not branded Hezbollah as a terrorist. If last I checked, so I think
Hmm.
in my opinion, those I mean it was a leader of a minority community protecting his own interest, protecting his own rights within a certain when there was a civil war in Lebanon. But as far as look, we are in Kashmir, we empathize with the people of Kashmir. We because we are people of conflict again. We have seen how conflict decimates,
Hmm.
destroys lives. Thousands of our youngsters are still lying in graves. There are mothers who are wailing still after 10 years of remembering their sons. And we see what is happening in Palestine, and we see the silence of the world community. And there are double standards in Ukraine. When in Ukraine, they galvanize the whole world. for that particular context.
But Najmu, I'm struck by the fact that if you look at the large parts of the Muslim world, the Arab nations, in Abu Dhabi, film awards were being hosted, which all of Bollywood was attending. They didn't come to most of these sort of Gulf countries they may have made some sort of token noises, but they've not really opened their doors for example, refugees from Gaza, right? You have an election. Your immediate reality, your immediate priority is the restoration of your political rights. Why are we seeing more noise around Hezbollah than around I don't know, Article 370, for instance? I'm
Look,
just curious to understand.
look, Barkha, I mean, you remember, you're a very, very senior journalist. You have experienced and seen entire conflicts around the world in Kashmir as well. And I mean, our country, India, was a champion and was a conscience keeper of every victim in the world, starting from non-aligned movement. And what we want our country is to raise our voice for the people of Palestine. I mean, this is not a country of, for people of one particular religion. This is a people of, this is a democracy. This is a diverse nation. We want our country to speak up if there are human rights violations happening, as Prime Minister Modi rightly did mention about Ukraine. But his silence about Palestine is also deafening, is also hurting us. So what we want is Government of India should take a serious note. I mean, we thank Government of India for sending aid to the people of Palestine, and we hope they increase and they do, speak to multiple parties and stakeholders there. But what we also need to realize is that an entire region is again being lit up. It has multiplied effect. It has ramifications across the world. So what we don't want to see is a repeat of 80s, where the entire Muslim world was
Okay.
up in flames. So it has ramifications for us. You have to understand. What happened in Afghanistan had ramifications for us. What happened after post-Iran revolution had ramifications for us. So there are serious ramifications, and we want Government of India to sort of take it seriously. And that is why, and please, Barkha, don't brand an expression of sympathy or sorrow as something.
Okay, we lost Najmu there. I'm sure he'll reconnect. He's is somewhere in a remote part of the Kashmir Valley. Before I come to Ambassador Dayal and General Katoch, Tavleen, briefly do go ahead. I think there's an important point he raises about even the Hamas is not officially designated as a terror organization by the government of India. Of course, we see what happened on October 7th, and we're approaching its 1 year anniversary as an act of terror. But that classification, he's correct to question there. Do go ahead. You wanted to respond to what he was saying. Can we unmute Tavleen, please? Tavleen, I can't hear you. Let me just unmute you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One is that the whole of the Muslim world is not actually up in arms over the killing of Nasrallah, number one. And why is it that we never see the same sympathy? We're approaching the first anniversary of the attack on Israel, which started this war. Right? And so how is it that the Kashmiris have shown no sympathy for them? So, and whether India calls Nasrallah a terrorist or not, a lot of other countries do. And just as we would be upset if say, Kassab's, hanging was celebrated or was mourned in another country. You've got to admit that there is a difference between people who live by the gun, who I mean, if he's killed, he was actually a man who picks up the gun to kill innocent people is a terrorist. So whether the Indian government does it or not, it doesn't matter.
So this is, of course, one of the most polarizing issues in the world. The world is grappling with how to look at what Israel is doing, Israel's actions, whether they're proportionate, not proportionate, whether they set a template for how other countries can and should react. Ambassador Dayal, the fact is that Israel is expanding its footprint of aggression. That, whichever side of the debate you're on, we've gone from Gaza now to Lebanon. We've gone from Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen, airstrikes on Houthi bases in Yemen today. Prime Minister Modi met with Mehbooba Abbas. India has tried to walk a kind of balancing line here, has called for an end to civilian killings, has also sent relief and help for civilians, but has somehow been seen to be softer on Israel than was historically true. How do you see India's position? Do you find it has calibrated at all? Do you find it has shifted at all? Ambassador Dayal.
Well, first of all, let me clarify two important issues. Firstly, when one of the speakers said that Prime Minister Modi has not said anything in support of the Palestinian people and their sufferings, let me state that while the Prime Minister condemned the terrorist attack on October 7 by Hamas against Israel, at the same time, he's been extremely vocal about the sufferings of the Palestinian people, and he has said that these sufferings should be brought to an end. India has also sent relief supplies to the people of Gaza. Secondly, the PDP's stand is absolutely hurtful and incorrect because Iltija Mufti, the daughter of Mehbooba Mufti, made a controversial statement comparing the situation in Kashmir to that of Gaza and Lebanon. That I find is highly objectionable, and I think it has drawn a sharp response. Now, as regards India's position in regard to what is happening between Israel and its, the difficulties or the attackers on three fronts, that is the Hezbollah, the Hamas, and the Houthi. Israel is fighting already on three fronts. India has all along said that this is not an era of war. India has tried to counsel all parties to take recourse to dialogue and diplomacy. But things have really gone out of hand. I think that the Israelis have decided that enough is enough, and that the October 7 attack really pushed them to the limit. So, I don't think that there is anything that India can do to restrain Israel. Israel has good relations with India, but India can't stop Israel from carrying out actions which it considers necessary for the protection of its own people. Now, let me mention that I'm afraid that this war could expand even further. Israel is fighting on three fronts. There is a possibility of a fourth front opening in Syria and Iraq, where there are Shiite militant groups backed by Iran, and they could step in and also mount attacks against Israel. And even further, Iran could step in. Now, there are indications that Iran is holding back because it doesn't want to get directly involved. It wants its proxies to do the fighting, but Iran is afraid that if it gets directly involved, then even the United States would become a party to the war, and then the consequences for Iran would be terrible. So, what can India do in this situation? India has been counseling all parties to hold restraint, to exercise restraint, but things are beyond our control. There is nothing really which we can do because the fighting has escalated so high. Now, Hezbollah is not going to stop fighting because it knows that Israel is out to destroy it. And at the same time, the Houthis will keep mounting attacks. So this war which Israel is fighting on three fronts is not going to come to an end. And we can only hope and we can counsel Iran to exercise restraint and not get involved, because that would mean the widening of the conflict very, very much more.
Well, Ambassador Dayal, there have also been tensions. I don't know where Ambassador Dayal went. I hope he can reconnect. There have also been tensions with Iran after Iran made a comment comparing Muslims in India to those in Myanmar and Gaza. So there's also been that friction unfolding. I do want to bring in General Katoch. I know, Najmu, you want to respond to everything you've heard, but just give us a moment. General Katoch hasn't spoken yet. General Katoch, go ahead. On the one hand, Ambassador Dayal makes the argument that there's nothing India can do. India has spoken out of the suffering of the civilians in Palestine, but there's nothing, like even the Americans aren't able to restrain Israel at this point. Israel has literally and metaphorically tasted blood. The pager explosions, then the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah, now the Houthis in Yemen. How should India be reacting, and how concerned are you about the street protests in the Kashmir Valley? General Katoch.
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, let me start with firstly the street protests which have taken place in Kashmir. In my view, it is totally uncalled for. I have no problems with the political parties expressing their stand, but for the political parties to instigate protests of this nature, uh, co- close down certain parts of the city in support of a terrorist, I think is absolutely unacceptable. In my view, it was these same people, especially the Abdullahs, who were responsible for the genocide which took place of a small Hindu population in Kashmir. And the biggest shame of that, which I think this community will have to live down, is that at that point of time, it was the common Muslims who had been friends with their Hindu neighbors for generations. They took part in the slaughter. They took part in the rape, in the loot, and in ensuring that the Hindu brethren went out.
Mm.
I agree when people say that Muslims have also suffered in Kashmir, but not one Muslim has suffered because he was a Muslim. The Hindus suffered because of their religious identity. The Muslims suffered because of other reasons, not because of their religious identity. Now, leaving that aside, and I don't support what they have done there, I still give the Mehbooba Mufti and Abdullahs the right to hold their private protests. They can say we don't like it, but to close down the city, no, I will not never ever condone that. Getting down to the second part of what you have said, uh, you see, on the 7th of October last year, for the first time in history, we have armed groups actually attacking civilians, destroying the houses, not attacking the military, attacking the civilians, destroying the houses, raping, looting. Even small babies were bayoneted and burnt. This
Mm.
even animals do not do. They are worse than savages. And I think no God will ever forgive them for that act of savagery, which is unacceptable under any circumstances. And the very next day, the Hezbollah started firing missiles onto Israel on the 8th of October, and they continued with that attack on civilian targets, not on the military targets, on the civilian targets. They continued for close to 10 to 11 months, and now the attacks have taken place on them. So for these people who have been who have been attackers for so long and hiding in their safe hides, and
Yeah.
now they're coming out and saying, what has
But
Israel done with
but
the
but but,
pages?
but, General, General Katoch, if I may say to you, I do agree that October 7th was a clear act of terrorism. I went at that point to report on it. But since then, it's been a year. It's coming to a year, and if you look at the numbers, even with some disputes, many call this an unequal conflict. The Palestinians say that more than 40,000 people are dead in Palestine, and according to the Israel government, 1,700 thereabouts are dead in Israel. To those who say that the moral debate has shifted, it is shifted from the 7th of October. You can't apply the template you did when the Hamas came in and went for families and babies and women and children in the kibbutzes. There is that question to consider. And what would you say to that? I mean, India has to,
Yeah.
just like on Russia, Ukraine, India has shifted its position. Shouldn't India be shifting its position on Israel Palestine?
No, no. On the Israel-Palestine question, India's position has been very consistent, and I support that position. We have consistently said that we want a homeland for the Palestinian people, and we have also
Yeah.
said that we want that homeland for Israel. But unfortunately, and I've discussed with many people here also in the foundation, just recently we had, I won't mention who had come. And when it comes to the question of Israel, there are people who say they have no right to exist. The Iranian leader Khamenei has consistently said, we will drive them into the sea, we will eliminate them. The Hamas has and the Hezbollah have been saying, from the river to the sea, they
Yeah.
will eliminate, Palestine will be free. Now, listen, if the Israelis don't have a right to live, they will fight for that right. I think there is absolutely no doubts in my mind. They have a
Okay.
right to live, they have a right to the land. So,
I think I,
no,
I
but
think
no,
India.
on just one more, one very, 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 very
Yeah.
small. You see, the
Yeah.
question was, if I take the same scale of, in percentage terms, of what Hamas has done to Israel on the 7th of October, it will come down to 1 million people being killed in India on a similar scale. What should India do then? What is the proportionate response? People tell me, what is proportionate? I said, you tell me. You come to my villages, you kill innocent women and children, and then you ask for proportionate? In my terms, a proportionate response is destroy them completely. so that they never do this act again? And why hasn't the Hamas still released the prisoners? Those are
The
the questions which
hostages,
we need
yes.
to answer. They want peace,
Okay,
release the
okay.
prisoners.
Okay. Okay. Now we have a whole bunch of questions here to tackle. I'll come to Najmu first, then Tavleen, and then back to Ambassador Dayal. Najmu, the point, the reference was made to your leader, Iltija Mufti. We also had the statement from Iran drawing comparisons between uh, Gaza, Myanmar, and India. And this is something that India, of course, sharply reacted to. Now, please do respond. You're correct in saying that the Indian government has not officially recognized or designated the Hezbollah to be a terror group. That is technically correct. But what is the investment that a Kashmiri person feels marching on the streets for a war that is not yours? What is it to do with you? Simply bases on the fact that he's a Shia leader. It's just a point of religion. And we've not seen this kind of religious affinity expressed, as I said, in countries like the UAE, which
Barkha,
are
I
theocratic
think
states.
I have a
Yeah,
lot
go
of
ahead.
points. Please give me some time.
Okay.
First of all, before the line dropped last time, what I was trying to convey is please don't criminalize every act of dissent in Kashmir. Don't look at it. It is just an expression of sympathy and solidarity with the people of Palestine and expression of helplessness. Because what we are seeing every day on our television screens, on social media, we feel helpless that we cannot help people of Palestine because we have closely seen what conflict's done. Second point, what you mentioned about Abu Dhabi, I have a question for Major General Dhruv Katoch. I know Major General Dhruv Katoch, and I know that he supports the complete rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits back to their homeland in Kashmir. If they have a right to their homeland in Kashmir, why don't Palestinian millions of displaced Palestinians have a right to their own land in Palestine? Why should they live in gas chambers? Why should they live in open air chambers? Open air prisons. And talk about October 7th. Why don't we talk about settlements? Why don't we talk about if someone takes your home? Every single day they take away your land. Maim your children or rape your wives and your daughters. There should be no reaction to that. So what we are looking at is one side of the story. What we are looking at is a completely one side of the story. That's number two. Number three, look, all we are saying is that there are expressions of sympathy which are organic. We can understand when people in our country felt that Hindus in Bangladesh are being, subjected to certain crimes. We could feel that, and we completely understand that because we know what these things do to the people. We understand the pain of our Kashmiri brothers. We know what uprooting or completely displacing from particular land does to social fabric of that particular community. We understand all
Yeah.
those things, and that is why we are saying that please, for God's sake, and as Barkha, you rightly said that Netanyahu has tasted blood. So all you're saying is that he's a mad dog, that he's going on
I,
attacking countries.
I I don't use that language for
I
anybody.
okay. Let me
I'm
not put you
sorry.
in that.
I
Let me
did
not
not say that. I
let me
don't
not
use
put
that
you.
language.
Let me not put
Yes.
you in that tight spot. But all I'm saying is that he's
No, it's not a
going
tight
on.
spot. I just don't use that language.
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
Yes.
Completely agreed. So all we are saying
Yeah.
is that there is a certain country which is ravaging other countries, attacking their sovereignty without even thinking about the ramifications it has for the larger world. You have an
Okay, let me come
entire
in.
region up in
You
flames
were
right
you
now,
were
and the
you have
ramifications for
raised
us, especially in Kashmir, are serious.
You have raised an interesting point by saying, and I'll take that to Tavleen. General Katoch, I'll give you a chance to respond to him on the Pandits issue, that if Indians can be exercised about the rights of Hindus in Bangladesh, which is something that the Prime Minister raised no less, then why would you not understand or appreciate that Kashmiris may be exercised about what's happening to the Palestinian people? Like, we live in a globalized world. Why should we only be concerned with what's happening in our own immediate backyard? And it does keep coming back again and again to the fact that even the Modi government, which has been accused or complimented, depending on the point of view, for furthering relationships with Israel like no other government, has not designated the Hezbollah to be a terror organization.
Look, I really think we're getting things mixed up here. The Hindus that are being killed in Bangladesh are innocent people. Nasrallah was not an innocent man. He headed a terrorist organization. We must, 1 minute, please, you've got to listen. There is a difference between terrorism and, other kinds of violence. What happened on October 7th was just the most horrific kind of terrorism that I can think of. But Yahya, whatever his name is, the leader of Hamas, who's in the tunnel still, the new leader, he could have ended that war before it started by just releasing the hostages. They took babies hostage. You think of a child of 6 months being brought up in a tunnel for more than a year and a half, and the hostages who've been released say that they're in terrible conditions. I actually am not a supporter of Netanyahu. I believe that his strategy has been wrong all the way along. So I don't want to get into that, whether he's a mad dog or that isn't relevant. What is relevant is whether it is right for India to be on the side of the aggressor or the victim. Now, for instance, in Ukraine, I actually object to the fact that we've had to walk such a thin line because the aggressor was Russia. All that Ukraine wanted was to live on its own. And don't get me started on how many times the Palestinians were given a chance to settle this. There was a time,
Yeah.
look, I can give you a long list of
But the
times.
perception, but Tavleen, before I come to Ambassador Dayal, Najmu, hold on, because the others haven't spoken. The perception of who's a victim and an aggressor also changes over a prolonged conflict, right? So I think if we were
Not
having this
saying there's
discussion a
a
year
terrorist
ago,
law.
but when you look at 40, if these numbers are accurate, that 40,000 Palestinians have been killed and 1,700 Israelis have been killed, I understand that what Hamas did was an act of terror. I was there on the ground in Israel reporting it in the immediate aftermath. But a year later, there are serious questions, and India has
Yes,
expressed some of those concerns about the massacre of civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas.
it is what Yahya Sinwar wants. He's actually gone on record to say that the more that more civilians are killed in Gaza, the worse that Israel looks. It's not as simple as it seems. It's horrible what is happening in Gaza. It's horrible what has happened. Even actually on where the settlements are concerned. I'm on the side of the Palestinians when it comes to Israel trying to expand its way into settlements. But for instance, there are things that have happened in history. You cannot reverse what happened in 1947. I mean, you can't reverse the creation of Israel. You can't reverse what happened in Kashmir. So, what I'm saying is that for the Kashmiris to only sympathize with terrorists, you may as well sort of now start siding with the Taliban as well and with the Lashkar-e-Taiba. And, it's not acceptable. There is wrong and right. And there are two, sometimes not two sides to a story.
Okay. Let's get Ambassador Dayal in. The fact of the matter is that the Taliban is now in government in Afghanistan. And, the Hamas at one point was elected to the government in Palestine. So these things, India did not want to do business with the Taliban, but has had to start doing so. And we live in very complex and terrible times. So there's history, but where I will slightly disagree with Tavleen is that history doesn't remain static. Now, in the situation, what are India's choices? You said India can't restrain Israel. But Prime Minister Modi did meet with Mahmoud Abbas. We have said that both Israel and Palestine have a right to exist. We believe in the two-state solution. We have sent help or offered help to the civilians in Gaza. But should we be more aware that we can't pretend like we live in a part of the world where this has no impact on our universe? These protests in Kashmir, we can't just ignore. We can't just look the other way. Ambassador Dayal.
People in Kashmir have a right to express sympathy with the sufferings of the people in Lebanon and in Gaza. However, my objection was only to the fact that Iltija Mufti compared the situation in Gaza and Lebanon with that in Kashmir. I think
Yeah.
that comparison is totally bizarre and I strongly object to it. Secondly, as regards doing business with Hamas and doing business with Afghanistan, certainly India is open to having good relations with all concerned, even with the Hamas. You know, India has always been a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. However, it is Hamas which has come in the way of peace. Let me mention that the Palestinians and Israel had concluded a two nation solution, a two-state solution. Who rejected it? The Hamas rejected it. And therefore, it was back to square one, where the Palestinians were left without a homeland. The idea had all along been to give them a homeland and to have the Palestinians as well as Israel live within secure borders. Who objected to that? Who said, no, they don't want this to happen? They don't want the state of Israel to exist. It was Hamas. And Hamas was totally backed by Iran. Iran, as General Katoch said, has consistently said that it wants to throw Israel into the sea. It doesn't believe that Israel has the right to exist. So, unless both parties can learn to coexist, there is bound to be conflict. India has always counseled both sides, not just the Hamas,
So do
not
we? So
just
do we? Do
Israel.
we at this point, sir? Do we at this point sit out any expression of opinion? What should be our response to these pager explosions? I don't really care about Nasrallah, but pager explosions as a form of warfare. You know, it's a whole new era we are entering. If the pager in your hand can blow up and kill you cross border, we're entering completely a different era of warfare. What should be our response?
You know, when war breaks out, then all hell will break loose. All becomes fair in war. And if the Hamas people were within their rights to try and abduct Israelis, children, girls, rape them, kill them, then certainly how can you say that the Israelis have been wrong in indulging in the pager explosions and the mobile explosions? All is fair when you are countering an enemy which doesn't believe in playing by the rules. Hamas has not played by the rules. And therefore, I said, there is little India can do. If Hamas plays by the rules, if Hezbollah plays by the rules, then certainly there is some scope to iron things out. But in this present situation, they have to face the consequences of whatever they have done.
General Katoch, I want to bring you in. You know, the analogy that was drawn with if Pandits have a right to their homeland, why don't the Palestinian people? Firstly, India's official position is that the Palestinians do have the right to their state. But also, one should say that we have not yet seen these protests anywhere but in the Kashmir Valley so far. And there are Shia Muslims elsewhere in the country as well. In fact, 10% of Shia Muslims live in India. So, what are we actually seeing unfold here, and how should we be responding? Do we just say, okay, maybe this is just some pent up discontent? Let there be a peaceful protest and come out. What do you say, General Katoch?
No, you see, pent up, I don't think it's got anything to do with pent up emotions.
Go ahead,
can you see
sir.
me?
Yeah. Go ahead, sir. I can see you.
Oh,
I can see you.
yeah.
Just the electricity
Okay.
at my end. I can see you. Go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So you see, what I'm saying is, I don't think it's got. I think it's a very large, to a very large extent. I feel a radicalization has taken place in the Kashmir Valley to a very large extent, and this is an expression of that radicalization. That is one. Number two, I would also like to respond to the points which I think how should we respond? Well, they've done it. It's okay. I think let's see as to how it goes from here. But I think it'll die down within a day or two. It's not going to continue, right? They've shown their support. The political parties have gone on board. It is election season. Everybody's interested in votes, and one party has done it. The other has also gone on board. They are both vying for the same vote share of the Shia vote.
Yeah.
So that I think that has got much to do with it. But for the people to come out, I think it's very simple to get people out anywhere if you have to. It's not much of a task to get them out. My objection is really to closing up everything and all that, and that I put the blame on the political parties. The rest, the question came as to what Mr. Najmu spoke about.
Yeah.
When Israel has targeted the Hezbollah, they have not targeted them because they were Muslims. There is a huge difference. They have targeted them because it is a terrorist organization, and these people have built their bunkers below proper civilian accommodation. Now, why is the Hezbollah hiding behind the skirts of women and children? Don't they have the courage to go and fight out like men in the open? But they will always be behind the civilians, so that if the first casualties will be civilians. Here, the headquarters was under proper accommodation where the civilians used to live, and it was just 63 meters from the UN school. And it is, I would give it to the credit of Israel that there was been absolutely minimal collateral damage. He also spoke about the Hindus in Bangladesh. You see, people don't realize the difference. The Hindus in Bangladesh have been slaughtered because they were Hindus. They were not slaughtered for any political views or for any other ideology or something. They have been slaughtered because of their faith. And I think that is what I object to. One last point on the pages. On the pages, who was holding the pages? It was the tactical commanders of the Hezbollah, the tactical commanders. They were a part of the war, and they have been rightly eliminated with zero collateral damage. And I think it has been brilliantly done. That is my stand on this. Barkha.
Okay, I have to close. Unfortunately, Najmu Saqib seems to have lost his connection, but we'll give Tavleen Singh the last word. You said you're not a fan of Netanyahu, but what is the but?
No, I'm not a fan of I believe that his strategy was wrong. I think that he should have actually concentrated on getting the hostages back first. And I think that that he lost the moral high ground because of the killings in Gaza, which have really shaken the whole world. But please remember what Yahya Sinwar, who is the new leader of the Palestinians and their military leader, has said more than once that, we want Israel in this position. We want them to be completely, they've lost the image that Israel had of being the good guy has died. And I think that the Palestinians are as responsible for what has happened in Gaza as Netanyahu is.
Okay, we will have to leave it there. I want to thank our guest today. Unfortunately, we could not get reconnected to Najmu Saqib, but one thing's for sure, we are living in turbulent times, and as Ambassador Dayal warned us, if Israel has opened 3 fronts, we should stand by for a 4th. The footprint of this conflict isn't going to be confined within borders, and it'll be very, very important to see how Iran responds next and how India manages that relationship in particular. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dayal, General Katoch, Tavleen Singh, and earlier to Najmu Saqib, and to our audience as always. Thank you for watching. See you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.